Republican side that are for this bill are just basically saying, send your taxpayer dollars elsewhere. And third, it would take us back to a pre-Civil War reality, and that's just a shameful thing for the Republicans. Thank you. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Ms. Greene from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Mr. Santos. Thanks for coming to talk with us today. There's been a lot of discussion back and forth today about reapportionment and how districts of Congress are drawn. There's also a lot of discussion going on about how much federal dollars goes to different states based on the number of people that are counted up in the census and assigned to these states and districts. It's extremely concerning, though, for most Americans that the 2020 census was found to have several miscounts, and you've been asked about this today in this hearing. Even more concerning is the fact that most of the miscalculations either benefited blue states with overcounts or harmed red states with undercounts. As you've already told us, 8 states were overcounted in the 2020 census, 6 of which were blue states. 6 states were undercounted, 5 of which were red states. Mr. Santos, understanding that you were not the director yet in 2020, why do you think these miscounts happened?
The miscounts occurred just as a matter of course of any decennial census. No census has ever been perfect, but they've always been good enough for the purposes that they're intended. So this is simply how things shook out. There was absolutely no consideration of red, blue, purple, or whatever. We simply stuck to our mission to count, to do a complete count. We did our quality checks, and we published the data to the president.
And Mr. Santos, you've described yourself as a scientist today. Isn't it important to be accurate in your science, so to speak, and in counting? Also, there's an actual law, Sentencing Reform Act of 1984, that really is your job to fine people $5,000 for refusing to answer questions on the census. Was this a law that you enforced? Did you enforce this law in states that were overcounted and states that were undercounted after the census?
Yeah, we are a statistical agency, not an enforcement agency, so we've never enforced that.
So no one was fined. So there were overcounts, there were undercounts, and no one was fined according to the law, and the numbers shook out and were accepted. You know, many of my colleagues have brought up the fact that Article 1 of the Constitution requires a census every 10 years to determine how many congressional seats and electoral votes states receive. This is incredibly important. In Congress, with close party margins, this apportionment can be the difference between being in the majority and being in the minority. In tight presidential elections, thankfully this one wasn't tight at all. President Trump overwhelmingly won. But it can determine the winner, these apportionments can. In other words, the census is more than a mere survey of the demographics of the citizenry. It directly affects election integrity. Mr. Santos, do you believe it's important that our elections be secure and that only legal voters be counted for apportionment purposes?
I have, that is a policy question of who should vote and who shouldn't. We are a statistical agency. We are nonpartisan, and so I will leave it at that.
Right. Well, hopefully in this next Congress and under the next president, we can make a change. That we have a bill, H.R. 7109, the Equal Representation Act. This bill would statutorily add a citizenship question to the decennial census for 2030 and beyond, and it will exclude aliens from the apportionment base. The Senate hasn't taken up this bill yet, but hopefully they will next session. And this way, there will be a citizenship question, and non-citizens will no longer be included in the count for reapportionment when that's done. This certainly would change the makeup of Congress. But let's also talk about some of my colleagues across the aisle have brought up that black and brown voters weren't counted in the census as well. One of my colleagues from Texas was saying that this led to 2 more white representatives being sent to the House of Representatives. I think it's important to note that black and brown people can vote Republican as well, and they don't have to vote Democrat every single time. Mr. Chairman, I've run out of time. Thank you. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Director Santos for taking time to be here today. Supporting children and families is one of our most deeply held American values. It is a reflection of our collective commitment to helping one another, particularly in times of need. To uphold this principle, accurate census data plays a critical role in ensuring vital federal resources are allocated where they are most needed. The Census Bureau works